7:38, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on into a Friday, friends, along with Ken Weaver, Johnny B, Dan Mandis here. Want to welcome on into the program Jonathan Fahey joining us. We spoke to him yesterday as well about some illegal immigration stuff. But Jonathan, you are a former federal prosecutor. You did work for ICE. You were director of ICE for a time. So you can wear a lot of hats for us here on Nashville's Morning News, and you're going to keep us updated on the various Trump legal entanglements, and I appreciate that. So today, the media, of course, and part of my opinion on this whole thing with Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, Donald Trump, is that the media is really trying to sell this thing, quite frankly, as a bigger deal than it is. Earlier in the broadcast, actually, I played some audio of Dr. Phil, and even Dr. Phil is looking at this case and saying they don't even know if there's an actual crime that has been committed yet here they are trying to take out a candidate for president of the United States and a former president as well, of course. And so let's talk a little bit about the hush money trial today. For example, it's the seventh day of testimony beginning in the hush money trial. And apparently they're going to be talking about some secretly taped phone call between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen.
Yeah, that's right. I think I think there's a conversation between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump where they discuss these payments. But what's really interesting, and you're talking about Dr. Phil, but I think Dr. Phil isn't alone. I've not heard anyone make a very good defense of this case, even on the most left-wing networks. And you know what surprises me the most about it is I thought this was going to be really bad beforehand, and it's even worse. And the amazing thing is Donald Trump yesterday really looked like a victim of a scheme to get money from him. So, you look at this and you look at the unseemly conduct, and he's the victim of it. He's paying people, or supposedly paying people that just to keep, because they're basically saying they're going to go harm his reputation by going forward with certain stories, and he's forced to pay them or essentially has to. And, they haven't even gotten to a crime yet, but I think the idea is to make him look really bad and make him look sleazy, and I don't think that's come across at all. But ultimately, the crime is the money that Michael Cohen paid to these people was reimbursed supposedly by Donald Trump, and it was listed as a legal expense in the company books, which is his company alone, which again, it's payments to a lawyer listed as legal expenses. Doesn't seem really that far-fetched. And then therefore that somehow influenced the 2016 election. Again, this is, the Democrats have still not accepted the results of the 2016 election, but what are we, 8 years later? But so far, I think it's going extraordinarily well for Donald Trump. Doesn't mean he'll prevail because he's got a lot against him with a New York jury and a judge that seems predisposed to, against him.
Well, Donald Trump always talks about how this is a conflicted judge. He has a conflict of interest. And so talk about the judge. That's number one. And talk about Stormy Daniels, who I can't believe there'd be any jury that would see her as a credible witness. And certainly Michael Cohen, who is a judge, even labeled him as a chronic liar, a chronic perjurer. So, I mean, you're dealing with a situation where you have, in my opinion, two people, Cohen and Stormy Daniels, not credible. And you have this payment. And it seems to me, and Donald Trump and others have, I don't know if Trump has ever said this, but others have said that he was utilizing that money so that it would save him from embarrassment with his family and not necessarily trying to impact the 2016 election.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a very good point. And that's, your last point, the FEC and also I believe the Southern District of New York looked into this crime and found the exact same thing, and they didn't go forward with any charges because they didn't view this the way this state prosecutor is not necessarily viewing it, but certainly trying to present. The other thing is, when you look at Michael Cohen, the serial liar, and there's so many instances of lying, committing perjury, but what came across with these tapes or comes across with these tapes is he was representing Donald Trump and secretly recording. So his intention, even back then, was to harm Donald Trump or to have something over Donald Trump, which not only is deceptive and dishonest when you're talking to your client, they have a right to assume it's confidential, but certainly he intended to exploit this down the road. And the other thing that came out interestingly was we know that, Michael Cohen has lied repeatedly, but then what came out yesterday was this bias and this sort of resentment he has to Donald Trump because he thought, remarkably so, that he should have either been the chief of staff or the attorney general in Trump's administration, and was resentful and bitter that he wasn't asked to even come to Washington. So you not only have repeated lies, you have a strong bias to harm him both before and afterwards. So everything really, it's like, yeah, they're going to say, we want you to believe this person and convict somebody of an 8-year-old basically bookkeeping error or whatever you want to call it. So that part of it is really distasteful. And just real quick, back to the judge that you mentioned, I've been a prosecutor, or I was a prosecutor, I'm not now, but for 19 years, both state and federal level. And, you really do look at things. You want not only to be unbiased and be impartial, but a judge also should avoid the appearance of being a partial judge. So this idea that he wants to stay on this case where certainly, my understanding is he's given money to President Biden before. His daughter is making money off of, anti-Trump type of stuff. So it really is surprising to me he wouldn't just want to step aside and have a judge that at least doesn't have the appearance of being conflicted. But, everything he's done in this case, this gag order makes no sense to me, but it really seems to be part of the Democrats' overall strategy, which is to silence Donald Trump and to make their main issue, other than abortion, is just Donald Trump and these trials, and then prevent him from responding. It's truly, everything about this just reeks of, politicization. It harms the justice system. It does nothing. We see New York is on fire, and this is what the DA wants to concentrate on. It's really a disservice to New Yorkers and to everyone else.
Well, Alvin Bragg, the DA, I mean, people are looking at him as a buffoon, and you're right. He didn't want to take this case on, but he got sort of bullied by a couple of former staffers, and then he decided, okay, I'll go ahead and take this case on. I just realized I didn't book enough time for this segment, Jonathan, because there is so much. Let's talk real quickly about the judge. His daughter, Judge Merchan's daughter, has raised millions, tens of millions of dollars for Democrats over the last several years. And she's clearly a leftist and clearly someone who has Trump derangement syndrome. And she's clearly part of the swamp. Is there, from a legal standpoint, is there not some sort of a mechanism where someone somewhere can look at Judge Merchan and say, yes, there is definitely a conflict of interest here?
Well, it seems to me, you can, make motions, which they've done, to recuse the judge because they're not impartial, or the allegations that they're not impartial. But those types of motions are typically very hard to prevail on, and it might be something that comes up if he is convicted on appeal. But it does seem like this case, when there's financial interest, is usually something that would move a judge off a case. And even though it's his family member, and would be the argument, it's not him directly, it's a family member, but if his daughter is actually making money off of being anti-Trump, and probably make more money if Trump is convicted, and certainly probably gets notoriety because her dad's the judge, it seems like the judge should really, the right thing to do, in my view, would be step away. There's probably lots of judges there, even if they're, Democrats or liberal judges, that probably don't have as many things that would give the appearance of impropriety or partiality, I guess, more than anything else. So I think, that's been tried, but I think it could be an appeal issue. But it really just undermines the whole system, because even if he continues to, whatever happens, unfortunately, I don't even think the Democrats think this case is legitimate. It's just a vehicle to harm Donald Trump and to advance a political interest. So ultimately, they don't really care. They want him convicted. If it gets overturned on appeal, I don't think they really care. They would have gotten what they want, which is basically take him off the campaign trail, dirty him up, because they know if this election is about Joe Biden, they lose. Everyone knows it's a disaster presidency that we've never seen before. So their only hope is to dirty up Donald Trump. So that part of it, it's
do you know what's so funny? I've got like 60 seconds left. But I've got to get this question in. Would you say that it's actually, okay, folks, go with me here. It's actually good that Mershon didn't recuse himself. It's actually good that his daughter has raised, millions, tens of millions of dollars for Democrats and used to work for Vice President Kamala Harris, also raised money for Adam Schiff. It's actually good because then you see, and it's all there for America to see, how incredibly partisan this whole thing is.
That's a great point. In a weird way, they, meaning the Democrats, probably would be better off with a more impartial judge or judge that at least appears more impartial. So that's a terrific point, because then if this judge had stepped away and they put another judge in, it takes an argument away. And and I think people are seeing this. And again, I watch all of these shows and read everything out there, and I've not heard a very good defense of this case from the left. But they're still happy as can be about it, and they try. But it's so unserious. And when you compare this, if this was anyone else other than Donald Trump that did something similar, or even was accused of something similar, it would be laughed out of court, and nobody would take it seriously. And a jury to be brought in a city again that's on fire, and this is a criminal case they're dealing with, at most a bookkeeping error that didn't harm anyone, that didn't cost anyone money. This is a private company, so it's probably never been done before, and it will never be done again. But again, Donald Trump has a different standard, and it's unfair not just to him but to everyone else. I think, and you're very politically connected.
You're there in the swamp, I believe, and when you hear the swamp talking, all the swamp talk. Are there a lot of people out there saying, yeah, we're going to get him? Or I think you mentioned before, the Democrats are just like, you know what? This is embarrassing, and this is not going to go well.
Yeah, I think this case and the Letitia James case really jumped the shark for everybody, because it's just such utter nonsense. And I've not heard I've heard people try to defend it, but I've not heard anyone either privately or even in a serious way defend these things on TV or in the print, as hard as they try. And so I don't think really on the left, they know this isn't legitimate, but they're playing along because, and I think some of them wish these cases weren't brought because of the point you made earlier, because it undermines every other case, because now it just seems like a bunch of cases that are politically motivated. Well, and
it's interesting when you look at Fani Willis out in Fulton County, she is so incredibly corrupt, and you've got her disastrous testimony where her dress was actually on backwards, and so you see how corrupt she is. So you've got Letitia James, that's a train wreck, everybody knows. You've got Alvin Bragg, another train wreck. That's what we're talking about now. This is just a complete unjust going after Donald Trump. And you've got the calamity that is Fani Willis. So all of these cases they look so bad, they're good for Donald Trump. You got the last 30 seconds, go.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think in many respects they help him, but again, the Biden campaign, their only other option is referendum on Biden, so they might as well try this, because option B is a sure loser, because his presidency by every objective measures has been an absolute catastrophe. But I agree. I think people are looking at this and we don't want a justice system that treats people unfairly, no matter who they are, and certainly not one that's political.